All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Teresa Mastrodonato, and I want to welcome you to our workshop, Citation, Attribution, and AI, Disclosing AI Use in Research. My name is Teresa Mastrodonato. I'm the head of instruction and student experience. We have Andrea Melrose here, who is our senior academic integrity coordinator in the office of the provost,
Yes,
right?
quite a mouthful.
Quite a mouthful. And then Stephen Pidgeot, who is the associate director of the Writing Center. We're going to present today on this topic. We've split it up into a couple different ways, so I just want to let you know that we will I'll give you a brief introduction. Then Andrea is going to talk about academic integrity and the generative AI policy. Stephen will talk about utilizing generated AI content in your academic writing, and then I will close it out with citing AI generated content in your academic writing. So a little bit about the introduction. We have some previous sessions that we offered September and October, and today's our last session. We will have those recordings available soon from all these sessions. So if you missed any of the sessions, we will have them available. So we started with the basics of generative AI. We talked about then some tools. We talked about prompt engineering. We talked about verifying AI generated content. And today we're talking about citation, attribution, and AI. So those are kind of what we'll have. And eventually we will send out information on where these videos live. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, and I can be the
Sure.
or if you want to do it.
Clicker,
I don't know if I don't think the clicker works, but if you want to do that yourself, okay. Or if you can
stretch whatever's easiest. Yeah. Hi, welcome. I'm Andrea Melrose. I'm the Senior Academic Integrity Coordinator in the Provost Office. I've been at WashU for just over a year and a half. And I'm glad we get to share some more information with you about artificial intelligence.
Is it not working?
Great. So just overarchingly, artificial intelligence is a tool, and it's something that can be used to supplement learning, but also wanting to be really cautious that it doesn't degrade or replace learning. So thinking about the learning objectives for your course and for your assignments, and making sure that you are authentically learning and not taking shortcuts that are also taking away from your learning outcomes. In terms of policy, I'm just going to touch on the one that covers our artificial intelligence, which is on the next slide. But artificial intelligence is covered under our policy on plagiarism. So attributing the acknowledgement of someone else's authorship or of artificial intelligence's authorship. And again, this is going to vary course by course. So I'm going to recommend that you pay close attention to your syllabus. Even within a course, the expectations may be different per assignment. So make sure you're really clear on what is permissible to use in terms of tools that utilize artificial intelligence or using artificial intelligence directly. All right, so why do students cheat? I've been doing this for a little while, and anecdotally, I call it the triangle of doom, which is our next slide. So typically, I hear from students that they cheat or make difficult decisions around not doing their own work because of time management or poor prior planning, a lack of understanding of the content or the directions for the assignment, and a fear of failure or imposter syndrome. So usually those three things come into play, and a student makes a bad decision or a mistake because of those pressures and feeling like they need to really perform. One thing I want to say about the fear of failure is that college is supposed to be hard. Your classes are supposed to feel hard. Things are supposed to be challenging for you. If they weren't difficult, you could be teaching the class. So really, you should be feeling stretched. You should be feeling a little bit of discomfort, because discomfort is what's happening when we're learning something new. So embrace those feelings. recognize that you can do it, that you don't need to fear or feel like an imposter. It is supposed to be challenging. And some research really supports my triangle of doom, but they did a study on why students use artificial intelligence. And some of the top answers were around grades, around time management, around the idea that everyone is doing it, which is not the case, a lack of understanding or a lack of confidence in the material. And so all of those things are influencing the use of generative AI. Additionally, they're doing studies that show that generative AI and ChatGPT is doing work that's maybe a low C grade level. So if you want an average response or maybe slightly below average, then you would use ChatGPT to have that output. And I know that most of us aspire to better than that. So just be aware. Most tech is using artificial intelligence. So you do a Google search and there's AI mode, and so it's using artificial intelligence. There are other things that you're using that you may not realize is actually using artificial intelligence. Grammarly has an artificial intelligence mode that you can turn on and off. And so if your faculty member is allowing you to use Grammarly, they may not be allowing you to use it with the AI mode turned on. So just be aware that artificial intelligence is infiltrating many of the things that we're using, and it's not always a help, which is what I'll talk about in terms of recommendations. All right. So in surveying our students, 25% of students told me that they did not review the academic integrity statement in their syllabus. It's probably something your faculty member went over at the very beginning of the semester, but it's really up to you to revisit that and make sure you're paying attention to it, especially as you do your assignments. So it's similar to getting pulled over for speeding and telling the police officer that you didn't know the speed limit. You're still responsible for violating that law. And so you're responsible for knowing the expectations in your course in order to follow the standards for academic integrity. All right, some reminders for that. Always read your syllabus. Again, sometimes the expectations vary certainly per faculty member, per course, even within assignments. I know expectations can change between studio and lab, between group work and not, and so just really paying attention to what the expectations are. And if those aren't clear, make sure that you're asking, because you're probably not the only one in the class that would like to know that information. And then also keep track of your work. So it can be really helpful to have your version history and be keeping track of that. To keep track of if you are authorized to use artificial intelligence, to keep track of your ChatGPT conversations. We have a WashU ChatGPT that you can log into, and it will keep track of your conversations. This is helpful if your faculty member requests that you attach the conversation as part of the assignment, or that you cite the assistance of Gen AI as part of the assignment. Or if there's a question about how you use Gen AI, you can share that conversation with your faculty member. So using something where you can go back to those conversations. And then if you're using any other collaborators, make sure that you're including that. Occasionally your assistants in instruction or teaching assistants or other folks are providing information to you. If that's not your original idea or information, always attribute it to the folks that you're getting that from. As I mentioned, it's supposed to be hard. So it's supposed to be hard. There's lots of avenues for help. For your advisor, your librarians, the writing center. Make sure that you're utilizing all the resources on campus. This is a very resource-rich campus. So if there's something that you need, ask, and one of us will find a way to connect you to that so that you have support. Oh, I think one before that. No. Uh-oh. Maybe go too forward. Oh no. All right, I lost the slide.
Did we lose a slide?
I think I lost the slide. But there's an article on 5 times to use, 5 times not to use artificial intelligence. And one of those times is when you need to learn and synthesize new ideas and information. So showing your critical thinking, when the high accuracy of the work is important. When you do not understand the failure modes of artificial intelligence and aren't able to filter for that. When the effort is the point, so you may know how to write the methodology for that lab, but the effort of doing it and the repetition of doing it is important. And then when AI is bad, and this slide is an example of when AI is bad. So I asked AI how many R's are there in the word strawberry, and it said 2. And that's incorrect. There are 3 R's in strawberry. So if you are not able to look at the output of ChatGPT and realize for yourself that it's giving you bad information, shouldn't be using it as a tool. It is not wholly accurate, and it can. If we have time at the end, we can talk a little bit about those as well. We have a great website for academic integrity that talks through the process and some other things. So if you have questions specifically about the integrity process, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Any questions right now for Andrea? We can also have, well, if you have questions later on, you can also do it, but I split it up so that like after each section, we have a Q&A. So any questions right now? I don't see anything in the chat. So I will pass it on to Stephen, if you want to do the.
Yeah, I think it will. That's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna stand behind the table just so I have access to the mouse, if that's all right. So I'm kind of here to talk about the integration of these kinds of tools into your writing process and some things to think about from an academic integrity point of view. So I kind of think one of the challenges facing us as writers is that a lot of our approach to academic integrity prior to ChatGPT recognizes like, okay, there's a distinction between thinking and writing, and there's a distinction between our voices and other voices. That becomes really problematic because I don't think that's actually quite true. And that becomes even more problematic when it comes to using AI sources, because actually thinking and writing are connected very closely. You can't really separate out those different stages. So when you are, for example, writing a paragraph, you're really thinking through those ideas. The first time you're drafting, it's the act of putting them down on the page. Voices, and you're integrating them into your paper. You're having new ideas as you're doing that. Like writing is thinking and thinking is writing, and right. So it's very difficult to separate those things out. What you have are not clear lines. You have a whole lot of blurry lines, and and AI blurs them even further. So I think kind of what we need to do as writers is bring back a little bit of separation to it. And I'll sort of give you some examples about what I mean. So to sort of build on the discussion we're having about the different kinds of policies, I think there are 2 kinds of policies about using generative AI that are easy to follow, and they're the 2 at the sort of like opposite ends of the spectrum. So it's really easy to follow a policy that says complete prohibition, you can't use it in any way. That's sort of easy to follow. And on the other end, you can use it however you want, but I want to know all of the information about how you use it. That's kind of easy to follow too. What is a little more difficult for us as writers is the ones where we've got some use that's allowed and some prohibition that's allowed. So for example, you can use it for brainstorming, but you can't use it to write the paper. Or you can use it for proofreading, but just as a grammar check only. So like, what counts as proofreading? What counts as brainstorming? So I want to look at a couple of examples of the way these lines can blur a lot as an example of sort of the things we as writers need to be concerned about and sort of have our antenna up and watch for. So This example is about where does brainstorming end and writing begin? All the examples I'm using today are coming from a Grammarly promotional video that's on YouTube that's promoting its service to students and specifically its AI service to students. So they use an example of what does brainstorming look like using their AI. So the brainstorming example they use has a student asking, help me understand the different strategies for addressing climate change. So now normally when we think of brainstorming, we think of the storm being inside the writer's brain. And the idea is to get the ideas that are inside the writer's brain out down on the page. So for example, when we do a brainstorming session in the Writing Center, that writer is going to be talking the majority of the time. My role as the tutor is to get them talking, to ask them questions. They know the topic, they know the material. My idea is just to help them get some of those ideas out on the page. So I'll say, tell me about the topic. You're at the start of the process. Tell me what you're thinking. They'll talk. I'll ask questions. I'll take notes for them. I'll periodically go, hey, tell me a little bit more about that. That's really interesting. Or I'll say, hey, you talked about this earlier, and now you're talking about this. How are they connected? But the idea is the storm is inside the student's head. When you ask generative AI to brainstorm, like help me understand the different strategies, these are the examples that online video showed. And this is only 3 out of what would have been like 7 screenshots of information produced. So from an academic integrity point of view, if you were to use these ideas in the paper, we need to cite Grammarly as the source of these ideas because they came up with that. As opposed to, like, we normally think of brainstorming as getting the ideas out of your head down on the page. Most of these ideas are coming from a short prompt. So we have to cite those again, because that's someone else, some things else. But that's an example of how that word brainstorming looks very different in the generative AI space. They then go on, the example student kind of picks one thing and say, okay, give me an outline for a paper that looks like this. So you see up here, they say, oh, okay, give me an outline for this paper. And then Grammarly produces an outline. Based on the question, just outline for me a paper on this topic. So again, from an academic integrity point of view, maybe we went to Grammarly just to do some brainstorming, but with just a couple of clicks, we are now already at a full outline for the paper. Now, outlining is argumentation. Outlining is part of the rhetoric of how you present your ideas. So if AI produces the outline, we have to cite that if we're using that outline. If they produce the ideas, we have to cite that as well. That can be hard to recognize because all we did was kind of press a button and we just kind of asked it one simple question. That's an example how the generative AI blurs the lines even more. So let's go on to something that seems a little more simple, like, okay, editing, proofreading, it seems like we feel like we should know what that is. Here's another example from that same video where the student wrote a paragraph and then you can click in Grammarly, the little button at the bottom, and it'll say, okay, here's all the things you can ask me to do with this paragraph. And one of the things you can ask it to do is please make it more persuasive. So if you push a button, the mouse is not working. Okay, you push a button and you just say, make it more persuasive. Grammarly then will rewrite that paragraph to make it more persuasive. And if you notice, there's a little button, green button that just says insert. So if you like what it wrote, you can just insert it into your writing. But from an academic integrity point of view, that should be a quote if you sort of use that, because Grammarly has really rewritten that paragraph. And it's not just like they changed the semicolon or they changed a comma here and there. They changed, some cases, the order of the ideas. They're not really paraphrasing. They're like really rewording. So from an academic integrity point of view, if we use that in our paper, we have to quote it because it came from somebody else. So this is just kind of an example of the goal of AI technology is different from the goal of the writer. The goal of AI technology is to be seamless and to integrate as directly into your work as possible, to eliminate all of the friction. So we were talking earlier about the integration of the tools. If you notice, a lot of that integration is very much kind of in your face. It's highly visible. So in the Grammarly interface, for example, and I'm showing an example from Box here. So if you go in Box and you pull up a file, that AI box is right there. Zoom is the same way. Grammarly is the same way, where your paper is in their whiteboard and then the AI tool is on the side. The idea is to eliminate all the friction. They want you to think of it as an extension of yourself, but it's not an extension of yourself. It's a source like any other, and we have to treat it that way. So I think what we as writers need to do when we're integrating it into our writing process is we have to build the friction back in. And we have to kind of deliberately do that because AI is trying to eliminate that friction. But even in traditional research, we always talk about the friction you need. We talk about it in terms of you need really clear note taking. You need to know what's a quote, what's a paraphrase, what's a summary. You need to know where that material came from. You need to have all the citation information to get that. So all those rules apply to academic integrity, like, sorry, to AI as well. It always bothers me that AI and yeah. Okay. That's too many AIs. Okay, so I think what we need to do to build that friction back in is have some questions in mind when we're using the AI. First question is, why am I going to generative AI? What is it I'm hoping to accomplish? That will avoid some of the slippage, I think, where, okay, I went to it to brainstorm, but then it produced some sources and I sort of used those sources and then it gave me a paraphrase and I kind of used that. Let's go with a specific purpose in mind, use it for that, and then stop when we've accomplished that purpose. So that first question is, why am I using it? That second question is, okay, this is why I went to it, but then how did I actually use it in the paper? Did I use any of its language? I have to quote that. Did I use any of its ideas? I have to cite that, right? So like, all right, this is what I intended to do, but this is what I actually did. And then the last question, what question is, okay, do I have what I need to give my audience all the breadcrumbs they need from a citation point of view to like correctly show this idea belongs to someone or something else? My source in case is AI, or this language belonged to the AI. So I think the trick is, as writers, we treat it like any other source and all the same rules apply, but with the added recognition of the design of the software doesn't want us to think like a source, like it's a source. It's pushing you to think of as an extension of yourself, and it is not an extension of yourself, right? It's a source like any other. And I think that plus a real careful reading of the policies and then questions to the instructors when we sort of say, okay, like bring the case instances to your instructors and say, okay, if I use it like this, is that okay? Or I got this from ChatGPT, I'm going to use it like this in my paper. Is that okay? Would you like me to avoid that? They are more, hey, we're all struggling with this. Like they are more than happy to help provide guidance for the policy that's in your class. Now, and I'll turn things over here to Teresa.
That was a great preprint.
Yeah. Questions for Stephen before I move over to my section? And I will check any questions for Stephen? I'll check the chat.
Yeah. Yeah. So they had the ideas before. Yeah. So I would apply the same thing. This is where it's tricky. I would apply the same thing as we would with a source, right? So for instance, if you're writing a paper and you've got a thesis or argument, and then you find an article, this happens all the time, that's making that argument, that argument's not yours anymore, it's theirs. And we have to cite as we got it. Now, you usually build on it and you find a way to sort of nuance it so your article isn't exactly your argument isn't exactly the same. I can see the same thing with AI, which is sort of like, I really think students or writers need like a deliberate approach to why am I going to it here? So like that kind of thing doesn't. Yeah, I think that's a great question.
All right, so I am going to bring it home. We have a great start with academic integrity, kind of give us the thing. Stephen brought in like how to use it, and like if you are going to use it, you need to cite it. So I will bring it home, rounding out citing generative AI in your academic writing. And so if you're allowed, again, to use AI-generated content, you then need to correctly cite the content that is created. Again, you always have to double check with your faculty member to verify how they want you to cite AI-generated content. And how you cite the information generated depends on the specific citation style. And I'm going to talk about 3 different styles: MLA, Modern Language Association, APA, American Psychological Association, and Chicago style. So, oh, wrong way. So MLA citation in their works cited. MLA recommends to not treat the AI tool as the author. This means you should start your citation with the title of what was generated, so your prompt. The title of the source is similar to the title of an article, is what was generated by the tool. And this may mean that you have to provide your actual prompt. And I got all this information directly from, all these are directly from the actual style guides themselves. The next part of the citation is the name of the AI tool. This is like citing the name of the journal, and that would be italicized. You then want to include the specific AI model or version of the tool, which is provide the name of the company that created the tool, provide the date the content was generated, and if that allows you to provide a stable URL for the content. Some tools actually allow you to create a direct link to the content that is created if they don't provide a general URL to the tool, so MLA. So let me show you an example. So if I had a text, I went into our ChatGPT and asked, can you provide a summary of the movie Star Wars? So I started the text, my citation, with the prompt, can you provide a summary of the movie Star Wars? ChatGPT, created by OpenAI on November 11th, and then I have a generic ChatGPT. I then asked it to create a cat in a snowsuit, an image. I went to another tool and had it create an image. And so I used chatboxap.ai. And so I had it create an image of a cat wearing this ski suit. That was the prompt. The title of the name of the program that created it. Fluorate Limited was the publisher, the date, and then this one gave me a direct link to that. You could create a stable URL for that. So that's MLA citation. So you have to start, there's no author, it is your prompt that you're utilizing. So that's MLA. APA is a little bit different. APA, the author for the citation would be the name of the company that creates the tool, and the tool itself can't be the author since it's not a living person. The date is the date that the chat occurred. The title is the title of the chat with generative AI in brackets, and the title is italicized. The source, like the name of the journal, is the name of the actual tool used, and then finally include the URL of the chat. And again, sometimes they allow you to create a direct link to the content created if they don't use that general URL to whatever chatbot it is. So for APA, for a text, I had it provide a summary of K-pop demon hunters. So the author is the creator is OpenAI, which is the company that created it. The date is the date that I asked for this the chat. I then put in provide a summary of K-pop demon hunters, and then in parenthetical I put generative AI chat. Then ChatGPT is the tool, and then the link to the URL of the service. I then had it create an image of a sloth in a wedding dress. I was trying to think of something cute. So I had them create a sloth in a wedding dress. And so again, Fluorate Limited is the creator of the tool. So they are considered the author, the date. I then had it create an image of a sloth wearing a wedding dress. I said it was an AI, generative AI image creator. Chatboxap.ai is the name of the tool, and then the direct link to that URL. So MLA and APA are a little bit different on how they cite it. Chicago style is even different. And let me share Chicago with you. So Chicago format states for most types of writing, you can simply acknowledge the AI tool in your text. And this comes directly from the Chicago Manual of Style, their Q&A. However, they note that for student research or a more formal article, you may create a numbered footnote. So the author of the content would be the tool that is used, ChatGPT. So like I said, each citation style is completely different. The publisher is the company that produces the tool. And then Chicago citation format states that you shouldn't include the citations from AI in your bibliography unless you can provide a publicly accessible link that your readers can access. So it would only show up in your notes in the paper. If you do create a citation for it in your bibliography, use the creator of the tool as the author and make sure to include the publicly accessible link. So here's an example from Chicago. So again, if you include the information about what you utilize to generative AI for in the text of the research, the note would look like this. Text generated by ChatGPT, OpenAI, the date, and then a URL. If you didn't include the information about what you utilize generative AI for in the text of your research, the note would look like this. Response to explain the legend of Mothman in Appalachia, ChatGPT, OpenAI, the date, and then the URL. So everything's each citation format's a little bit different. And so you definitely have to make sure that you check on that as you're working on, your paper, and depending on what citation style you use. And again, I took all this from I went to the MLA, I went to APA, and I went to Chicago style and looked at how they're citing, how they're talking about it. So again, it's a little bit different for each citation style. Then I also decided, because we also, we might have students and researchers who are creating their own journal articles as well. So journals can and will have their own acceptance of utilizing generative AI articles accepted for publication. If you're thinking of publishing in a journal, make sure that you review the AI policy that specific journal may have. And additionally, most journals want you to disclose that generative AI has been used. So I have just a couple of examples. So I went to the American Medical Association, and this is Journal of the American Medical Association. And they actually I took this directly from their, an article that they've written. So they have released guidance on the responsible use of these tools. These preclude the inclusion of non-human AI tools as authors and require the transparent reporting of such tools in preparing manuscripts and other content and when used in research submitted for publication. In addition, submission and publication of clinical images created by AI tools is discouraged unless part of a formal research design or methods. In all such cases, authors must take responsibility for the integrity of the content generated by these models and tools. And so they will start, according to this, they have in the submission, they actually asked them a couple questions. Did you use AI, a language model, machine learning, or similar technologies to create or assist with the creation or editing of any content in this submission? And you have to tell them yes or no. If they answer yes, they have 2 follow-up questions that they have to answer as part of that. Elsevier is another, they are like a great, they're like a vendor, and they do have a lot of different journals in there. So they talk about preparing a manuscript for Elsevier journal can use an AI tools to support them. However, the tools must never be used as a substitute for human critical thinking, expertise, and evaluation, and they should always be applied with human oversight and control. And then they have to check on responsible use of AI tools. They have to check the terms and conditions of any AI tool that they use to ensure that the privacy and confidentiality of their data and inputs, including their unpublished manuscripts, is maintained. So this is from Elsevier. And one last example, this is from Nature. And Nature, they talk about they're monitoring the ongoing developments in this area and review and update the policies. So they say large language models such as ChatGPT do not currently satisfy their authorship criteria. Notably, an attribution of authorship carries with it accountability for the work, which cannot be effectively applied to large language models. Use of an LLM should be properly documented in the methods section, and if a methods section is not available in a suitable alternative part of the manuscript. The use of an LLM or other AI tool for AI-assisted copy editing purposes does not need to be declared. And they define the term AI-assisted copy editing as AI-assisted improvements to human-generated text for readability and style, and to ensure the texts are free from errors in grammar, spelling, punctuation, and tone. So every journal is going to have a little bit different. And so as you're doing your own student research, they will tell you, you need, using AI, and these are the citation formats. And if you use those, they are completely different for APA, MLA, and Chicago. And then each journal that you look at is going to also have that. So you may start seeing when you're reading articles that they will have, they will mention in their methodology section or at the beginning how much of AI, what kind of AI they used. And then, as Andrea and Stephen talked about, AI is, in Grammarly and in other places. Well, many of our library databases also include AI as well. They have like some of our ProQuest databases. You can, when you find an article, when you pop it up, AI comes up on the right and says you can use AI to summarize the article. So just be aware of that it's in there as well. So it's, infiltrating everything right now. So, and then I have some resources, the APA style manual. API had a 3-part series on citing reference and citing generative AI in APA. They talk about reference formats. AI is a search engine and AI integrated into common software, and is AI allowed in APA style? The MLA handbook, I used the How Do I Cite Generative AI from their MLA Style Center, which is their official, and then Beyond Citation Describing AI Use in Your Work from the MLA Style Center. And then the Chicago Manual of Style, I went to their Chicago Style Q&A and got the information about citing and how they talk about citing it. So again, these come from the people who are working in MLA, APA, and Chicago. And now I'll open up for any questions that anybody might have. We got about 10 minutes left, and we'll open up for any questions that anybody might have, and I can stop sharing so we can see everybody on the screen. And if anybody has any questions in the room, please feel free to ask your questions, and online, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the questions.
Teresa, do you think the Purdue OWL is helpful for citation?
I went to Purdue OWL and they don't have citation wise, yes, but I did not see a lot of AI listed on there yet. So they're not up to date on that yet. I tried to find some stuff on, AI on OWL at Purdue, and I did not see a lot of stuff on there yet. So I think they are not. So for regular citing, you're good on OWL at Purdue. With the citing AI, it's just not there yet. Oh, Lori said, great presentation. Examples were helpful. Thank you, Lori. If nobody has any questions, we can end a little bit early. I want to thank everybody for coming today. Like I mentioned, we will have an announcement pretty soon about where each of these videos will live. We're still trying to find a spot for them to live so that everybody can watch, if you missed 1 or 2 of the workshops, you can watch them online. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and have a great afternoon.